Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Earth defense ship Liberty and watched the stars change color. The deep black of space suddenly filled with bright flashes as massive alien ships appeared from nowhere. His hands gripped the metal rail in front of him as more and more enemy vessels materialized in the distance. The bridge crew worked frantically at their stations while alarms blared throughout the ship. Admiral Lisa Grant's voice came through the communication system from Earth Command. Her words were calm, but Jake could hear the fear behind them. The Zephyrian Collective had finally arrived just as their scouts had warned 3 months ago. Intelligence reports said these aliens had destroyed 47 star systems in the past 100 years. They enslaved or killed every thinking species they found. Now they had come for Earth. Jake watched through the main viewing screen as the alien fleet spread across space like a disease. Their ships were huge and dark with strange curves that hurt to look at. Each vessel was easily 10 times larger than the biggest human battleship. The enemy formation stretched from one side of the solar system to the other. Jake tried to count them but gave up after reaching 500 ships. There were simply too many. Captain Rick Hayes piloted his reconnaissance ship USS Falcon toward the alien fleet. His mission was to gather information about enemy capabilities and intentions. Rick had volunteered for this dangerous job because someone had to get close enough to scan their technology. His small ship moved carefully between the massive alien vessels while his sensors recorded everything they could detect. What Rick discovered made his blood run cold. The alien ships had energy shields that could stop nuclear weapons without taking any damage. Their weapons were unlike anything humans had ever seen. Strange beams of purple light could cut through the strongest human armor like it was paper. Worse yet, the aliens seemed to know exactly where every human ship was located, even when they tried to hide. Dr. Monica Price worked in her laboratory aboard the research station, Horizon. She studied the first pieces of alien technology that Rick had managed to collect. Under her microscope, the metal looked normal, but when she tested it, the material was stronger than anything on Earth. The alien hull fragments contained traces of unknown elements that should not exist according to human science. Monica's analysis revealed disturbing facts about the Zephyrian psychology. Intercepted alien communications showed they viewed other species as nothing more than tools. Humans would be used as slave labor in their mining operations across the galaxy. Those who could not work would be killed immediately. The aliens had done this to dozens of other civilizations and felt no guilt about it. The first battles began near Neptune, where a small human patrol encountered Zephyrian scouts. The engagement lasted only minutes before all human ships were destroyed. The aliens used weapons that seemed to bend space itself. Human missiles and energy beams simply disappeared when they got close to enemy vessels. It became clear that conventional warfare would not work against this enemy. Admiral Grant called an emergency meeting of all fleet commanders. The situation was worse than anyone had imagined. Earth's combined fleet of 300 ships faced an alien armada of over 2,000 vessels. Every engagement so far had ended in complete human defeat. The aliens were not just technologically superior, they were absolutely ruthless in their methods. Jake listened to the reports from other battle zones and felt despair creeping into his mind. The Battle of Titan had cost humanity 50 ships while destroying only one alien vessel. The defense of Saturn's rings had been a massacre with 200 human fighters lost in 20 minutes. Each defeat taught them more about enemy capabilities, but the price in human lives was becoming unbearable. Intelligence officers presented their analysis of Zephyrian tactics and strategy. The aliens always attacked in perfect coordination as if every ship was controlled by a single mind. Their formations moved with precision that human fleets could never match. They seemed to anticipate every human strategy and counter it before the battle even began. Dr. Price discovered that the aliens had been watching Earth for decades. Hidden monitoring devices had been found throughout the solar system recording human military exercises and technological development. The Zephyrians knew everything about human capabilities and had planned their invasion accordingly. They had waited until they were certain of victory before revealing themselves. As night fell on Earth, billions of people looked up at the sky and saw the distant lights of alien ships. Panic spread through major cities as news of the military defeats reached the civilian population. Stock markets crashed and emergency services struggled to maintain order. Many people tried to flee to underground shelters, but there were not enough spaces for everyone. The aliens sent a single message to Earth in perfect English. They demanded immediate surrender and promised that resistance would only increase human suffering. The message explained that Earth's resources would be harvested and its population relocated to work camps on distant worlds. Those who cooperated would live while those who fought would die. The choice was humanity's to make. President Helen Brooks addressed the world from an underground bunker. She spoke of humanity's long history of fighting against impossible odds and declared that Earth would never surrender. Her words were brave, but everyone knew the truth. Humanity faced extinction, and their darkest hour was just beginning. The Battle of Europa began at dawn when Colonel Amy Foster received word that the Zephyrian fleet was moving toward Jupiter. Her defense force consisted of 80 ships positioned around the gas giant's moons. Amy knew this would likely be humanity's last major battle in the outer solar system. If they failed here, the aliens would have a clear path to Earth, with nothing left to stop them. Amy studied the tactical displays showing enemy positions and felt her stomach drop. Over 400 alien vessels approached in perfect formation, while her small fleet tried to establish defensive positions. The human ships looked like toys compared to the massive Zephyrian dreadnoughts. Each enemy vessel was armed with weapons that could destroy a human battleship with a single shot. Lieutenant Dan Carter climbed into his fighter cockpit knowing he might never climb out again. His squadron of 20 pilots was tasked with harassing the alien advance while the main fleet prepared for battle. Dan had been flying combat missions for 3 months and had watched too many friends die. The nightmares were getting worse, but he pushed those thoughts aside and focused on his instruments. The first wave of alien fighters appeared on radar, moving faster than anything human technology could match. Dan led his squadron into the attack, knowing they were hopelessly outmatched. The enemy pilots flew with mechanical precision, never making mistakes or showing fear. Their ships could turn on a point and accelerate instantly while human fighters struggled to keep up. Purple beams of energy lit up space as the battle began in earnest. Dan watched his wingman disappear in a flash of light before he could even call out a warning. The alien weapons cut through human shields like they were not there. Dan fired his missiles at the nearest enemy fighter, but they simply bounced off its energy barrier without causing any damage. Colonel Foster tried to coordinate the defense from her command ship, but the aliens jammed most human communications. Her fleet was fighting blind while the enemy shared information instantly across their entire force. The Zephyrians attacked from multiple directions at once using tactics that seemed impossible to counter. Every human move was anticipated and blocked before it could be effective. On Earth, President Helen Brooks watched the battle through long-range sensors. Each human ship that died represented hundreds of trained personnel who could never be replaced. The military had already lost over half its experienced officers, and the situation was getting worse with every engagement. Brooks knew that defeat at Europa would mean the end of organized resistance. Dr. Kevin Wells worked frantically in his weapons laboratory trying to find something that could hurt the alien ships. His team had tested every type of weapon in the human arsenal, but nothing seemed to work. Nuclear warheads exploded harmlessly against enemy shields, while plasma cannons barely scratched their hull armor. The alien technology was so advanced, it might as well have been magic. Dan Carter dove his fighter through a cloud of debris that had once been a human cruiser. The aliens were methodically destroying every ship in the defense fleet while taking minimal losses themselves. Dan counted only 3 enemy vessels destroyed against nearly 40 human ships lost. At this rate, the battle would be over in hours. With total human defeat, the alien command ship appeared on sensors like a metal mountain floating through space. It was larger than any human city and bristled with weapons that could level continents. Colonel Foster ordered all remaining ships to concentrate fire on this target, hoping to disrupt enemy coordination. The combined firepower of 60 human vessels struck the alien dreadnought, but the energy beams simply disappeared into its shields. General Paul Stewart monitored the battle from Mars Command and prepared evacuation orders for the outer colonies. Jupiter's moons held over 3 million civilians who would need to be moved before the aliens arrived. The evacuation ships were civilian vessels with no weapons and minimal shielding. If the defense fleet failed, these people would be trapped. With nowhere to run, Dr. Wells received urgent requests for new weapons that could penetrate alien defenses. He had been working on experimental plasma designs for months, but every prototype failed when tested against captured alien hull samples. The enemy materials were so dense and tough that human science could barely analyze them, let alone damage them. Wells began to suspect that conventional weapons would never be enough. Amy Foster watched her fleet die around her as the aliens pressed their attack. Her flagship was one of only 20 human ships still fighting while hundreds of enemy vessels closed in from all sides. The bridge shook as alien weapons struck their weakening shields. Amy knew the battle was lost but refused to retreat while civilians remained in danger. Carter's fighter was the last one still flying from his original squadron. His fuel was running low and his weapons were empty, but he continued to draw enemy fire away from the larger ships. An alien being clipped his wing and sent the fighter spinning toward Europa's ice surface. Dan fought to regain control while alien ships moved in for the kill. Intelligence reports from the battle zone painted a grim picture for Earth Command. The aliens were using new weapons and tactics not seen in previous engagements. Their technology seemed to be improving with each battle while human capabilities remained static. Worse yet, the enemy appeared to be studying human psychology and exploiting weaknesses in morale and decision-making. The retreat order finally came when only 12 human ships remained operational. Colonel Foster led the survivors away from Jupiter while alien forces consolidated their control over the system. The evacuation fleet had managed to rescue most civilians, but millions of tons of resources were now in enemy hands. The aliens would use these materials to build more ships and weapons. President Brooks addressed the nation again as reports of defeat reached Earth. She spoke of tactical withdrawals and strategic repositioning, but everyone understood the truth. Humanity was losing the war badly and running out of places to retreat. The next major battle would likely be fought in Earth orbit, with the survival of the human species hanging in the balance. As alien ships spread throughout the Jupiter system, their intentions became clear. This was not just conquest but complete extermination of human civilization. The Zephyrians were dismantling human infrastructure, piece by piece, while preparing for their final assault on Earth. Humanity's darkest hour was approaching, and few believed there was any hope left for survival. Admiral Lisa Grant stood in the war room beneath Earth Command, watching displays that showed alien ships advancing toward Mars. 3 weeks had passed since the disaster at Jupiter, and humanity was running out of time. The Zephyrian fleet had grown larger as more ships arrived from deep space. Intelligence estimated over 3,000. Enemy vessels now occupied the outer solar system. Grant authorized the use of Earth's entire nuclear arsenal in a desperate gambit to destroy the alien command ship. Every nuclear weapon on the planet was loaded onto fast attack craft and sent racing toward the massive enemy dreadnought. The warheads represented humanity's most powerful weapons accumulated over decades of military buildup. The nuclear strike reached its target as Grant watched through long-range telescopes. Hundreds of atomic explosions lit up space around the alien command ship, creating a brief artificial star. For a moment, hope filled the war room as officers cheered the successful attack. Then the light faded and the enemy vessel emerged completely undamaged. The nuclear fire had not even scratched its hull. Dr. Susan Clark worked in laboratories buried deep beneath NORAD Mountain. Her team was developing increasingly desperate weapon concepts as conventional arms proved useless. They experimented with antimatter bombs that could theoretically destroy entire planets. Quantum disruptors designed to tear apart matter at the atomic level. Gravity weapons that might crush enemy ships into singularities. Each new prototype failed when tested against samples of alien technology. The enemy materials seemed to violate known laws of physics by absorbing energy attacks and redirecting kinetic impacts. Clark's team began to wonder if the Zephyrians had discovered fundamental forces that human science did not understand. Their technology was not just advanced but operated on completely different principles. Captain Roy Martinez commanded the defense of Mars colony where 2 million humans lived and worked. His fleet of 40 ships was all that stood between the aliens and the largest human settlement outside Earth. Roy knew he could not win but hoped to buy time for the civilian evacuation. Every hour of delay might save thousands of lives. The Battle of Mars began when Zephyrian scouts entered the planet's atmosphere. Roy led his fighters into combat over the Red Desert, knowing this would likely be their final mission. The alien ships moved like living things, diving and turning with impossible grace. Human pilots struggled to track targets that seemed to anticipate every move before it was made. Dr. Beth Johnson worked alone in a small laboratory studying wreckage recovered from the Europa battle. She was a civilian scientist with no military training, but her expertise in biology might hold the key to understanding alien technology. Under her microscope, the enemy hull fragments revealed structures that looked almost organic. Tiny threads of what appeared to be living tissue ran through the metal like veins. Johnson's discovery changed everything humans thought they knew about their enemy. The Zephyrian ships were not purely mechanical, but contained biological components integrated into their technology. These organic elements seemed to process information and make decisions like a distributed brain. The aliens had created a hybrid of machine and organism that was greater than either part alone. The evacuation of Mars colony turned into a running battle as alien forces closed in. Roy's pilots flew desperate missions to protect the transport ships carrying civilians to safety. Enemy fighters pursued the evacuation fleet while human defenders died buying precious minutes. The red planet's sky filled with burning wreckage from both sides. Back on Earth, President Brooks authorized increasingly extreme measures to slow the alien advance. Military factories worked around the clock producing weapons that might delay the enemy for hours or days. Civilian ships were converted into improvised warships and crewed by volunteers who knew they were going to die. Every resource was committed to the defense effort. Dr. Johnson shared her biological findings with military researchers who immediately grasped the implications. If Zephyrian technology was partially alive, then biological warfare might be effective against it. Traditional weapons targeted mechanical systems, but a pathogen could attack the living components that made alien ships function. This represented the first real hope humanity had found. The problem was developing such a weapon without samples of living alien tissue. The organic components in the wreckage were long dead and too damaged for detailed analysis. Johnson needed fresh biological material from a functioning enemy ship, but getting it would require capturing or boarding an alien vessel. Both options seemed impossible given the technological gap. Roy Martinez fought his last battle in the skies, over Olympus Mons, as alien forces overwhelmed the Mars Defense Fleet. His ship was hit repeatedly, but he kept fighting as long as his weapons functioned. The evacuation transports were nearly clear when enemy beams finally penetrated his shields. Roy's final message to Earth Command was that the mission was complete, and Mars colony was empty. Clark's team in the NORAD laboratories worked frantically to weaponize Johnson's biological research. They had limited time and resources to develop something that might work against alien organisms. The first prototypes were crude bacterial cultures designed to attack organic molecules common in terrestrial life. Whether they would affect alien biology remained unknown. Intelligence reports from Mars painted a grim picture of alien intentions. The Zephyrians were not just conquering human territory but systematically destroying it. They dismantled human cities and installations, then rebuilt the areas according to their own needs. This was not occupation but complete replacement of human civilization with something alien. The retreat from Mars marked the end of human presence in the outer solar system. Only Earth and Luna remained under human control while alien forces consolidated their grip on everything else. Refugees from the outer colonies crowded into Earth cities, creating chaos and despair. Many people had given up hope and waited passively for the end. Admiral Grant received reports that alien construction ships were building massive structures in the asteroid belt. These appeared to be factories or processing plants designed to harvest raw materials on an industrial scale. The Zephyrians were preparing for a long occupation and complete exploitation of the solar system's resources, including its human population. Dr. Johnson made another breakthrough while studying the organic components in alien technology. She discovered that these biological elements shared certain genetic markers, suggesting they might have evolved from a single source species. If true, this meant all Zephyrian organisms might share common vulnerabilities that could be exploited by the right biological weapon. As alien ships approached the inner solar system, humanity prepared for what might be their final battle. Earth's remaining fleet took defensive positions around Luna while ground forces prepared for invasion. Everyone knew the odds were hopeless, but humans had never surrendered to impossible circumstances. Their darkest hour was at hand, but some still believed a miracle might save them from extinction. Dr. Beth Johnson's research team worked in secret laboratories hidden beneath the Swiss Alps while alien ships gathered in Earth orbit. 3 months of desperate study had revealed the key to Zephyrian biology. The aliens shared a common genetic sequence that controlled their neural networks. This protein chain was essential for their enhanced intelligence, but also represented a critical weakness. Johnson discovered that the Zephyrians had achieved their technological superiority through genetic modification spanning thousands of years. They had altered their own biology to interface directly with their technology, creating the hybrid systems that made their ship so powerful. Every Zephyrian was genetically identical in the areas that mattered most. This uniformity was their strength, but also their greatest vulnerability. The biological weapon Johnson designed would target the specific protein sequence that controlled Zephyrian neural function. When disrupted, this would cause cascade failures throughout their nervous systems. More importantly, the same proteins were integrated into their ship technology, meaning the weapon would affect both the aliens and their vessels simultaneously. Colonel Mike Turner volunteered to lead the mission that would deploy the first prototype weapon. His team of 12 volunteers knew they were flying into certain death, but the intelligence they gathered would be invaluable. They had to get close enough to an alien ship to release the pathogen and observe its effects. Success would give humanity its first real weapon against the invaders. Turner's stealth ship approached, a Zephyrian research vessel operating near the lunar surface. The enemy ship was smaller than most alien vessels, but still dwarfed the human craft. Its hull pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that seemed to follow the rhythm of a heartbeat. The sight reminded Turner that he was attacking a living thing as much as a machine. The infiltration took 6 hours as Turner's team carefully cut through the alien hull without triggering security systems. Inside the ship they found corridors that looked grown rather than built. Organic walls curved and branched like the interior of some massive organism. The air was thick with unfamiliar scents that made the humans feel dizzy and nauseous. Johnson's weapon was contained in a small aerosol dispenser that would release the pathogen throughout the ship's atmosphere. Turner activated the device in what appeared to be the vessel's central nervous system, then led his team toward the exit. Behind them, strange lights began flickering as the biological components of the ship started to malfunction. The effects of the weapon exceeded all expectations. Within minutes, the alien research ship began losing power as its biotechnological systems failed. The living components that processed information and controlled ship functions were dying from the genetic attack. Without these organic elements, the mechanical parts of the ship could not operate properly. Turner's team was captured while trying to escape, but their sacrifice achieved its purpose. The weapon spread through the ship's networked systems like a computer virus that targeted flesh instead of software. The Zephyrians had never encountered biological warfare directed against their own physiology and had no defense against it. Admiral Lisa Grant watched from Earth Command as the infected research ship sent distress signals to the main alien fleet. The pathogen was spreading through their communication networks because the aliens used biological components to process and relay information. Every ship that received data from the infected vessel became infected itself. The Zephyrian response revealed how dependent they were on their biotechnology. Ships throughout the fleet began experiencing system failures as the weapon attacked their living components. Their perfect coordination dissolved into chaos as communication networks collapsed. For the first time since the invasion began, alien vessels were operating independently without central control. Dr. Monica Price worked with military strategists to understand what was happening to the enemy fleet. The aliens' greatest strength had become their greatest weakness. The same neural networks that allowed instant communication across vast distances now carried the pathogen to every ship simultaneously. Their technological advantage was turning against them. The weapon's effects cascaded through the alien fleet like a plague. Ships that had seemed invincible began losing power and drifting helplessly. Their energy shields flickered and failed as the biological systems that maintained them died. For the first time, human sensors could penetrate enemy defenses and see what was inside their vessels. Johnson monitored the weapon's progress from her underground laboratory. The pathogen was mutating and adapting as it spread, creating new variants that attacked different aspects of Zephyrian biology. The aliens' own genetic modifications were working against them as the weapon found new targets in their altered physiology. What had been designed as a single attack was becoming a biological war. The first signs of alien panic became apparent as their ships began firing randomly at each other. Without their biotechnological coordination systems, they could not distinguish between friend and foe. The perfect unity that had made them so dangerous was breaking down into paranoid confusion. Some vessels fled toward deep space while others attacked anything that moved. General Paul Stewart coordinated human forces as they prepared to exploit the enemy's weakness. For months humanity had been on the defensive, but now they had a chance to strike back. Every human ship and weapon was readied for what might be their only opportunity to turn the tide of war. The biological weapon had given them hope, but victory was far from certain. The Zephyrian command ship tried to establish control over its fleet, but the pathogen had infected its systems as well. The massive vessel that had terrorized human forces was now struggling to maintain basic functions. Its weapons powered down as the biological components that controlled them succumbed to the genetic attack. Reports came in from around the solar system as the weapon spread to every corner of the alien fleet. Ships that had been attacking human outposts suddenly lost power and began drifting. Their perfect formations broke apart as individual vessels malfunctioned or fled in random directions. The disciplined invasion force was dissolving into chaos. Dr. Johnson realized that humanity had discovered something unprecedented in galactic history. No species had ever developed biological warfare specifically targeting Zephyrian physiology, because no one had survived long enough to study their weaknesses. Humanity's desperate situation had forced them to find a solution that more advanced civilizations had never considered. The tide of war was turning, but the final outcome remained uncertain. Many alien ships were still functional, and their weapons could still destroy human vessels with ease. The biological weapon had created an opportunity, but humanity would need to act quickly before the Zephyrians developed countermeasures. Their darkest hour was ending, but the greatest battle still lay ahead. General Paul Stewart stood in the command center watching displays that showed disabled alien ships drifting throughout the solar system. The biological weapon had crippled most of the Zephyrian fleet, but many vessels remained dangerous. This was humanity's chance to strike back before the enemy could adapt to the new threat. Every human ship and pilot would be needed for what came next. Stewart coordinated the largest human offensive in history. Every remaining military vessel joined, with hastily converted civilian ships to form a strike force of over 400 ships. Cargo haulers carried biological warfare dispensers, while passenger liners were armed with whatever weapons could be mounted on their hulls. It was a desperate fleet, but it represented humanity's last hope. Captain Nina Torres led the assault on the alien command ship that had terrorized human forces for months. Her crew included survivors from every major battle, united by their desire for revenge against the invaders. The massive enemy vessel was still partially functional despite the biological attack. Its weapons were offline, but it could still move, and its hull remained nearly impenetrable. The boarding action began when Torres brought her ship alongside the alien dreadnought. Human Marines cut through the enemy hull using plasma torches, while fighter squadrons provided cover. Inside the alien vessel, they found corridors filled with dying biotechnology. Organic walls were rotting, and mechanical systems sparked as their living components failed. Lieutenant Dan Carter commanded a fighter squadron that had been reformed with pilots from destroyed units. His mission was to attack weakened alien vessels before they could repair their damaged systems. The enemy ships that had once seemed invincible now struggled to maintain basic functions. Their energy shields flickered weakly, and their weapons fired erratically. Carter led his pilots against a formation of alien cruisers that were trying to retreat toward the outer system. The enemy ships moved sluggishly compared to their previous performance. Their perfect coordination was gone, replaced by confusion and panic. Human fighters swarmed around the larger vessels like insects attacking wounded giants. Dr. Kevin Wells finally had targets that human weapons could damage. With alien shields failing, conventional missiles and energy beams began finding their marks. The sight of Zephyrian ships exploding under human fire sent waves of excitement through the assault fleet. After months of helpless defeat, humanity was finally winning battles. The alien response to the biological weapon revealed how thoroughly it had disrupted their society. Ships throughout the fleet were operating independently without central coordination. Some vessels tried to fight while others attempted to flee. A few began attacking each other as their damaged biotechnology created false identification signals. President Helen Brooks addressed the world as news of the counterattack spread. Human forces were advancing on multiple fronts while alien resistance crumbled. The ships that had seemed unstoppable were now easy targets for human weapons. Citizens who had prepared for the worst now dared to hope that survival was possible. Torres fought her way through the alien command ship toward what appeared to be its central control room. The corridors were filled with dead or dying Zephyrians, whose enhanced biology had made them vulnerable to the genetic weapon. Their technology was failing as the organic components that powered it succumbed to the biological attack. The control room was a mixture of mechanical devices and living tissue that pulsed with failing energy. Torres and her Marines found the ship's central intelligence a massive organic brain that coordinated fleet operations. The brain was clearly dying as the pathogen attacked its neural pathways. Torres planted explosive charges throughout the chamber, knowing that destroying this target would cripple alien coordination even further. Admiral Grant watched the battle unfold from Earth Command as human forces pressed their advantage. Alien ships that had dominated space for months were being systematically destroyed by weapons that could barely scratch them before. The biological warfare attack had leveled the technological playing field and given humanity a fighting chance. Carter's squadron encountered a group of alien fighters, whose pilots were still alive but struggling with failing technology. The enemy ships moved erratically as their biotechnological systems malfunctioned. Human pilots found they could outmaneuver opponents who had previously been impossible to catch. The psychological effect was enormous as human confidence soared. Intelligence reports indicated that the biological weapon was continuing to evolve and spread. New variants were appearing that attacked different aspects of Zephyrian physiology. The aliens' genetic modifications were working against them as the pathogen found more targets in their altered biology. What had begun as a single weapon was becoming a cascade of biological attacks. The destruction of the alien command ship sent shockwaves through the enemy fleet. Torres and her crew escaped just before the massive vessel exploded in a spectacular display of light and debris. Without their central coordination, the remaining alien ships lost what little organization they had retained. Individual vessels began fleeing in all directions. Dr. Wells analyzed captured alien technology as human forces overran disabled enemy ships. The biotechnological components were fascinating but also horrifying. The aliens had turned themselves into living machines, sacrificing their individuality for collective efficiency. Now that same collective nature was ensuring their destruction as the weapon spread through their network systems. Steward coordinated pursuit missions against fleeing alien vessels. No enemy ship could be allowed to escape and carry word of the biological weapon to other Zephyrian fleets. Human forces spread throughout the solar system, hunting down survivors and disabled vessels. The hunter had become the hunted as humanity reversed the roles. The battle for Luna ended when the last alien garrison surrendered after their biotechnology failed completely. Human Marines found Zephyrian soldiers who could barely function without their technological enhancements. The aliens who had seemed so superior were revealed to be completely dependent on their organic machines. Without that support, they were helpless. Carter led the final assault on an alien staging area in the asteroid belt. The enemy had been building facilities to process solar system resources, but the biological weapon had infected even their construction equipment. Massive factories designed to strip mine entire worlds were shutting down as their living components died. As the counterattack continued, alien Resistance collapsed completely. Ships that had survived the initial biological assault were finished off by human conventional weapons. The fleet that had conquered dozens of star systems was being systematically destroyed by a species they had considered primitive. Humanity was proving that survival instinct and ingenuity could overcome any technological advantage. The last major alien vessel was cornered near Jupiter by a combined human fleet. The enemy ship tried to fight, but its weapons were nearly offline, and its shields were failing. Human missiles struck home again and again until the alien vessel exploded in a final burst of alien fire. The invasion was over, and humanity had won their greatest victory against impossible odds. Admiral Lisa Grant commanded the human fleet in the final battle near Pluto, where the last remnants of the Zephyrian invasion force had gathered. The aliens had attempted to establish a staging area for escape, but human pursuit forces had tracked them down. This engagement would determine whether any enemy vessels left the solar system alive to warn other Zephyrian fleets about humanity's biological weapon. The battle was fierce but brief, as the bioweapon had rendered most enemy ships barely functional. Grant watched alien vessels struggle to maintain formation while their living components continued to die. The perfect coordination that had made them so dangerous was gone, replaced by desperate individual efforts to survive. Human ships pressed their attack, knowing this was their chance to end the threat completely. Captain Jake Morrison commanded the assault force that cornered the alien rearguard attempting to flee toward deep space. His ships had been hastily armed with biological warfare dispensers to ensure no enemy vessel escaped infection. The sight of once mighty Zephyrian dreadnoughts limping away with failing systems filled Morrison with grim satisfaction. Humanity was finally winning. Dr. Beth Johnson worked frantically in her laboratory developing countermeasures against potential alien retaliation. She knew that other Zephyrian fleets existed beyond human space, and they would eventually learn about the biological weapon. Her team began creating second- and third-generation pathogens designed to overcome different potential alien adaptations. The war might be won, but vigilance would be eternal. The final alien command ship died when its biotechnological brain finally succumbed to the genetic attack. The massive vessel that had coordinated the invasion went dark as its living systems shut down completely. Human boarding parties found corridors filled with rotting organic components and disabled mechanical systems. The hybrid technology that had made them so powerful had become their tomb. Johnson's analysis revealed how thoroughly the weapon had penetrated alien society. The pathogen had spread through their communication networks to infect support vessels, logistics ships, and even construction equipment. Every piece of Zephyrian technology with biological components had been compromised. The aliens' greatest achievement had become their ultimate weakness. General Paul Stewart established the new Solar Defense Network using lessons learned from the invasion. The system combined traditional military assets with biological warfare capabilities, creating multiple layers of protection against future alien incursions. Deep space monitoring stations would provide early warning, while research facilities continued developing new weapons against potential threats. The victory had cost humanity dearly, with over 2 million deaths during the invasion. Entire colonies had been evacuated or destroyed, and the outer solar system bore scars that would take decades to heal. However, humanity had achieved something unprecedented in galactic history. They had not only survived a Zephyrian assault, but had completely destroyed an invasion fleet. Dr. Monica Price's research teams analyzed captured alien technology while carefully avoiding the biological components. The mechanical systems were centuries ahead of human science, but could be reverse-engineered safely. These advances would revolutionize human technology and prepare them for their new role in galactic affairs. The species that had cowered on One world was becoming a spacefaring power. Intelligence gathered from alien databases revealed the true scope of Zephyrian activities. They had conquered over 60 star systems and enslaved hundreds of species across the galaxy. Their empire stretched across thousands of light years held together by the same biotechnological networks that had been their downfall. News of their defeat would spread to every corner of known space. Morrison was promoted to admiral and given command of humanity's new deep space fleet. His mission was to patrol the outer system and prepare for potential alien retaliation. The ships under his command were equipped with both conventional weapons and biological warfare systems. Humanity would never again be caught unprepared by alien invasion. The psychological impact of victory transformed human society almost overnight. The species that had been facing extinction now saw themselves as galactic conquerors. Citizens who had prepared for the worst now celebrated humanity's first major military victory over alien forces. The fear and despair of the invasion was replaced by confidence and determination. Johnson's biological research led to revolutionary advances in medicine and biotechnology. Understanding alien genetic engineering techniques opened new possibilities for human enhancement and life extension. However, she insisted that humanity avoid the mistakes that had made the Zephyrians vulnerable. Diversity and individuality would remain human strengths. Reports reached Earth of other species celebrating the Zephyrian defeat. Civilizations that had hidden from alien raiders for centuries were emerging from their hiding places. Some sent diplomatic missions to Earth seeking alliance with the species that had accomplished the impossible. Humanity was no longer alone in the galaxy. The captured alien facilities in the asteroid belt were converted to human use, providing resources for reconstruction and expansion. The same factories designed to strip mine worlds for Zephyrian use now served human industry. The invaders' legacy would help their victims rebuild and grow stronger than before. Price discovered that several alien research projects had been focused on countering biological warfare. The Zephyrians had been aware of their vulnerability, but had been unable to solve it without abandoning their biotechnological advantages. Their own genetic modifications had trapped them in an evolutionary dead end that humanity had exploited perfectly. As news of the victory spread throughout human territory, refugees began returning to their homeworlds. The colonies that had been evacuated during the invasion were rebuilt with new defenses and early warning systems. Humanity was expanding again, but this time they were prepared for whatever threats might emerge from deep space. Stewart's intelligence. Analysts worked to understand the broader implications of their victory. The Zephyrian Empire had been built on the assumption that their biotechnology was invincible. Now that assumption was shattered, and other alien powers would be reassessing their own strategies. The balance of galactic power had shifted dramatically. Morrison led the first human expedition beyond the solar system to scout for remaining alien threats. His fleet carried samples of the biological weapon along with detailed information about Zephyrian weaknesses. Humanity was taking the fight to their enemies and ensuring that no future invasion could succeed. The war's end marked the beginning of a new era for humanity. They were no longer a primitive species hiding on one world, but a galactic power that other civilizations respected and feared. The message was clear to every species in the galaxy. Humanity had mastered the art of turning an enemy's strength into their ultimate weakness. The Zephyrian collective masters of biotechnology and conquerors of civilizations had met their match in a species that refused to surrender and possessed the ingenuity to weaponize life itself. Humanity's darkest hour had become their greatest victory, transforming them from victims into the galaxy's newest apex predators.